Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Everything Entertainment podcast. I'm so happy that you're here and listening, and let's go ahead and get started because it was a crazy week. It was a bonkers week. Of course, it was capped off by the two biggest events with Dune Part 2 and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Of course, we're going to be talking about those. I've seen Dune Part 2, and I'm about 20-ish hours into Final Fantasy VII, so we will be talking about that. But it was also accentuated by the fact that we had one of the best TV shows in a while come out with Shogun. We're going to be talking about that a little bit as well. So let's go ahead and get started. As we always do, we're going to be starting with the box office report. So last weekend, with Dune's giant release, it's going to be one of the biggest movies of the year. And sure enough, because, January and February, the box office has been a little bit sleepy. It's been a little bit sleepy. Yes, we've had some decent movies. We've had some good movies. I know a lot of people didn't like it. Y'all could suck on lemons. Mean Girls was a great movie. Not just good. It was great. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. I understand why some people don't, but personally, I loved that movie. But Dune Part 2 opens to $82.5 million after everything was settled. That is That's real impressive. Now, granted, when you saw the reviews and stuff, a lot of people started, as they always do. I see fans do this with everything. I saw people jumping up with when it was at 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, oh, it's going to make $280 million opening weekend. No, the 82, that's right about where it was projected. And nothing else came close. Bob Marley, One Love, $7.4 million. Ordinary Angels, $3.7 million. The Chosen, sticking in there at $3.3 million. And at number 5 is the movie we do not speak about, $3.2 million. Hey, Mrs. Webb, good job clawing your way back into the top 5. It's about the biggest accomplishment you're going to have. So it's just that. Obviously, Dune, this huge thing. I'm very interested in seeing how Dune does this weekend, because I don't think Kung Fu Panda 4 or Imaginary is going to really compete with it. I fully see Dune Part 2 taking I think Dune Part 2 will, but now that I think about it, I can see a scenario where Kung Fu Panda beats it. That being said, I won't be surprised if Dune wins it either. I'm interested in seeing this second week holdovers, because there are things, and I'm not going to spoil a whole lot, there are elements and there are themes in Dune Part 2 that I think are really going to turn off general audiences. So, again, while I loved it, and we'll get to my review here in a little bit, while I loved it, and I see a lot of, especially the sci-fi junkies and the hardcore sci-fi fantasy junkies praising this movie, I think you're going to see a lot of casual audiences that are saying that that's going to be a one and done, because it does some things and it takes some risks that I can see people walking off and going, no, this isn't a franchise for me. So I'm very interested in seeing how it does next weekend. That's kind of my biggest takeaways. Great for its opening. Let's see how number 2 does. Okay, so the second thing I wanted to talk about on the week that was. So yesterday at the Morgan Stanley, what is it called? The Technology, Media, and I should have written this down. Summit. Anyway, Morgan Stanley held a technology summit where all the big studio heads and a lot of the game developers and stuff, they were all there talking. And so Bob Iger was there as well, representing Disney, and he made a few comments. So there's 2 things that he pointed out in this interview that really kind of stuck out to me. The first thing is that he brought, which I've seen a lot of other people say as well. He brought up the idea a lot of people were talking about superhero fatigue, especially last year when neither Marvel or DC, neither one of them could really get anything off the ground. Everything they were releasing was just flop and flop and flop, with the one exception being a Disney project, and that was Guardians of the Galaxy 3, Spider-Verse. But other than those two, really, everything else that they were putting out in the comic book and superhero genres were just flopping hard. And so, you saw a lot of articles, about superhero fatigue, and I remember when that was happening, especially when the Marvels came out and just completely tanked. I just wanted to see the movies be better. I really did. And I'm one of the ones that liked the Marvels. I did. But I can understand why people didn't. And I still think there are things with the Marvels they could have done better. But one of the things that I hate in movie fandom is that, when the Marvels flopped and when, Marvel was going through all these, I saw people just cheering and proclaiming, ding dong, the witch is dead, Disney has fallen, they've collapsed. And then, because you had the Marvels, and like 2 weeks after that, you had Wish, which also just tanked. But so he pushed back on the idea. He said it's not superhero fatigue, and he just straight up said, like, audiences want great films, which has kind of been my thing, is that going to the movies, especially to movie theaters now, it is a time commitment, which a lot of people do not have. I know I sure as hell don't have half the time to go see the movies I want to see. But also, it's a heavy financial commitment, especially for groups of friends and especially for families. And regardless of what you think, I know a lot of us I go alone a lot. I know a lot of you go home a lot, go to the movies alone a lot. But the majority of people, because I know I have friends and I have people that I talk to, that unless like everyone in their friend group wants to go see the movie, they're waiting for streaming. And unless the kids want to see it, they're waiting for streaming. So, he's basically what we're saying, and what Bob Iger was pointing here is that audiences are not going to go out to your movies unless they're good. And that's kind of where my thoughts has been, is that I've seen more and more, like, the reason why Barbie and Oppenheimer did so good is because they were great films, and they managed to get great marketing campaigns to get it going. So here's the quote from Bob Iger. A lot of people think it's audience fatigue. It's not audience fatigue. They want great films. And if you build it great, they will come, and there are countless examples of that. Some are ours and some are others. Oppenheimer is a perfect example of that, just a fantastic film. And that is, of course, from Bob Iger at this Morgan Stanley conference. And that, I think that's the thing, is that, it used to be, there was a time back then when, back in my day, when you could put $10 down for you and a date or you and a friend and walk in, another $10, $15 for snacks for both of you, and, $25. It's a cheap 2 to 3 hour trip to the movies. But now, and I know because I talked to other people, and they're like, especially people with kids, they're like, hey, to go to the movies, to go see a Marvel movie, you got to think about, we take 20 minutes to drive there between me, the husband, the 4 kids, or me, the husband, and the 2 kids. It's $70. And then, we go to the concession stand, and we're looking at almost $100 for concessions, because of course the kids can't admit to anything they want to share. And so, you're talking almost $200 for a single night. And they're like, and half the times if the kids don't like it, they just get bored and they want to leave an hour in. So we've got all of that going on. And so you're seeing more and more, like, unless this is like a highly anticipated, one of their most anticipated movies of the year, they just do not see it. And I said this last year too on TikTok. Because I've said, I've heard the words, I will wait for streaming more and more often. Because we have other movies that I thought were okay. I thought were okay, or I thought were good even. That I think 5-10 years ago would have been gigantic hits. But there's also, things like Transformers. Okay? Pushing aside the fact that they probably should have never made another Transformers movie. 7 years ago, that would have been like an $800 million movie, the Transformers Rise of the Beasts. But, one, audiences had tuned out of the Transformers franchise, but 2, I think you had a bunch of other movies all coming in and audiences just didn't care. A lot of movies came out right at that same time. And another one is another Paramount movie, that Dungeons & Dragons movie that came out last year. One of the best movies of the year last year. It was great. I loved Dungeons & Dragons. But it flopped, and it flopped hard. 7, 9 years ago, that movie would have, I don't know. And to be fair, I don't think that was ever going to be like $1 billion movie. But I can see that making $700 million, $650, somewhere in that. Like, it would have been a nice little successful film. So, obviously, people are not showing up to see it. So, and, I've seen other podcasters, I've seen people on YouTube all bring up this idea of, we want superhero movies. We want more superhero. We want more Marvel. Believe it or not, we want more DC. We just need them to be good before we give the studios our money. Okay. But then the other thing he brought up, which this has been a point of contention with a lot of things. is he brought up that they've been killing projects too. Now, granted, they, as far as we know, they didn't do a Batgirl thing where they had an already finished movie and all that. But he basically said, hey, if this movie's not working out, we killed it. So let's go ahead and go to this quote. He said, you have to kill things you no longer believe in. And that's not easy in this business because either you've gotten started or you have sunk costs or it's a relationship with either your employees or with the creative community. It's not an easy thing, but you got to make those tough calls. We've actually made these tough calls. We have not been public about it, but we've killed a few projects already that we just didn't feel were strong enough. And I think that one of the things that the film industry is facing, and the entertainment industry, because you can even go to the video game industry, and that's part of the reason why that industry is, but with movies, they're reaching a point where, you know, I think that studios are going, hey, we are not going to invest $100, $150, $200 million into movies that aren't good. And I think because you're seeing audiences reject it. And maybe that's how, maybe. Now, we have scenarios, because let's go over to DC for a minute. You have, like, The Flash. Now, I know a lot of people that did not like The Flash. I'm, again, one of the minority that did. But here's the thing with The Flash, is that a lot of people were like, oh, they should have just killed that. Remember that most film is subjective, and I think this is one of those cases. Because you talk to anybody at Warner Brothers, you talk to anyone at Warner Brothers, they loved this movie. Like, people at Warner Brothers legitimately thought that this was going to be like $1 billion movie. And one of the things with that is that, you know, they were doing screenings like 2.5 months early. And that's how you really know that they believed in it. Because, like, I don't want to say it, Madam Web, you know, Sony held off till the last possible second to show that movie to any critics or anybody. You know, DC and Warner Brothers, they weren't even, like, they were literally showing a June release back in April. To general audiences, not even just plain critics. They were at a point where they thought that they were going to be able to build this massive word-of-mouth campaign, everybody, and as it does sometimes, hey, that's a risk you take when you start showing your movies that early. It blew up in their faces because even coming out of a lot of those advanced screenings, I was seeing a lot of, should we? And so that blew up in Warner Brothers' face, but that shows you they believed in it. So maybe some of these movies they're talking about, like, hey, we just didn't believe in that. I'm sure there's somebody that is thinking about that movie right now that it's like their favorite script they've ever written. Some of the animations that they saw, if it was an animated thing, was one of their favorite things ever. So it's all subjective, and I'm sure that, you know, there's probably somebody like, wouldn't it be neat if they did a movie where, and it's like literally that exact same thing that they killed. So that's all my thoughts of that. And then he also talked about, hey, we got some big movies coming out this year. And Disney does. Disney has a chance to really come back. They've got Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which I'm not extremely excited about, but, and I don't even know how to take this quote from Bob Iger, where he literally called it, it's one of the better ones of the franchise. So, I mean, granted, thankfully, unlike a David Zaslav, he's not jumping up and down like, it's one of the greatest films of all time. But I still don't know how to take just like, it's one of the better ones. But then they also mentioned they've got 3 big sequels, and these are all 3 that I think could be incredibly successful. Inside Out 2, Moana 2, and then what I do believe is going to be the highest grossing movie of the year, Deadpool and Wolverine. I think the writing's already on the wall. That's probably like your people that go to one movie, go out to the theaters to see one movie a year. That's going to be their movie. Other than that, yeah, so that's all of Iger's stuff. Now let's go ahead and move on to the movie and TV beat, which we've already been talking a lot about movies. So, House of the Dragon Season 2. We finally know when it's coming, sort of. So, at the same Morgan Stanley conference, they talked about House of the Dragon at Warner's panel, and they were basically saying that House of the Dragon Season 2 is coming this June. We do not have an exact date, but after Shogun, and since we're not getting Last of Us this year, I'm already, like, my mind's already split. Like, I need to finish some of my games before House of the Dragon comes out because I'm so excited for this, guys. You have no idea. Like, I can feel myself salivating. That's how excited I am just talking about it. It's going to be such a good show. And season 1, I thought, blew away all my expectations and made it even better. So I'm really hoping that I get caught up on my shows so that I can just go 100% all in on House of the Dragon. No other real information. They didn't show a new trailer. They didn't show any images. They just said, hey guys, it's coming in June. So, but you know, it did come out last week. And I'm only past the first episode. I'm like, I know about halfway through episode 2 right now, but Shogun also released. And speaking of House of the Dragon, Shogun is a series that a lot of people have been comparing to Game of Thrones. It's like feudal Japan Game of Thrones. And I get that. There's a lot of... Now, as an English speaker, as a generic basic bitch white guy, I don't understand half of it. Like, there's a lot of cultural things that make me go, huh. But the world building, the way that they created these families and these clans, I really enjoyed it, and I'm on pins and needles to see what happens next in the series. I think it's going to be wonderful. I can't wait to see the rest of it. Obviously, Hiroyuki Sanada is wonderful. Really, the whole cast, this whole ensemble, just really does great. And yes, it's a little bit slow. I often am watching TV when I'm doing other things, and this is a show that I can't because I have to be able to read the subtitles. And I know they did an English dub, but I'm also like especially for live action, if they're talking in Japanese, if the series was shot in Japanese, I'm going to watch it in Japanese. And that's where I go show it. But I'll probably next week's episode. I think with next week's episode, I'm going to try to catch up so that way I can do a full review of those two. Because so far, I think it's probably a solid 4 out of 5, 4.5 out of 5. It's definitely up there. But other than that, yeah, I think it's wonderful. Now next, my most anticipated movie. You guys know what we got to talk about every week. Superman. It is no longer Superman Legacy. On Threads, or was it Instagram? It was one of those. James Gunn came on and said, guys, it is no longer Superman Legacy. We are simply calling this Superman. Yes, we had Superman the movie, but this is the first full live-action film that is simply called Superman. And the first couple images that they showed, I think look great. Please make this movie good. Please make this movie good. I am so excited for it. You have no, I don't think anybody really realizes how anticipating I am for this show, this movie. I think this, I had talked about this with House of the Dragon. I can't wait. I'm on pins and needles. Superman, take that and amp it up to 11. I am going to go nuts for this thing. I don't think any of my friends, I don't think any of you guys are prepared for how nuts I'm going to go. I don't like these YouTube channels and stuff that do the frame by frame review and analyses of trailers. That's going to be me when they start actually dropping promotional images and promotional clips from Superman, because I'm probably going to do... In fact, I tell you what. On my TikTok, when the trailer drops, when the first official footage... I don't want to do set leaks or anything. When the first official I will do a trailer reaction video and film it. I hope that I can legally get past that. We'll figure that out. But I will do some sort of trailer reaction on my TikTok. So you'll be able to see just how excited I am. And because I'm already feeling my smile beaming. So Superman is now Superman. It is now filming. Next July, it is going to be one of the biggest movies of 2025. I think if this movie is good, I think it could be the highest grossing movie of 2025. I really do. I think that people are underestimating how much audiences want a great Superman movie. Moving on. So this Sunday, we are finally here. It's the end of the road for award season. It is the Oscars. So, what do we think are going to happen? Like I've said in a couple previews earlier, in a couple earlier podcasts, one of the biggest things that I think is going to happen, there are two big things I want to call out with this. One, we are, and I think I said this last week. And yeah, there's two big things I wanted to call out. One, we are going to know probably within the first hour, if not the first 30 minutes, how Oscars night is going to go. Because in the past couple of years, and granted, I have not seen the order that they're going in. I haven't seen, in the past couple of years, they've knocked out like the screenplay awards and the supporting roles pretty early on in the ceremony. If Oppenheimer takes that adapted screenplay and it takes Robert Downey Jr. takes the supporting, and then you start seeing Oppenheimer pull out all those technical categories, it's over, it's done. Oppenheimer's walking home with Best Picture. Christopher Nolan's walking, absent of some wild, crazy upset. Absent of that, I think that, yeah, if you start seeing everyone else walking away with it, Oppenheimer's going to take it. If it starts taking, you're going to see the momentum build. You're going to see that momentum build. The other one that I am really, which I think that this is the race to watch. If there is any chance for a major oh my god moment, it is in the actress in a leading role race. Because Lily Gladstone has been crushing it, but every time Lily Gladstone wins an Oscar, or not an Oscar, every time she wins one for Best Leading Actress, Emma Stone is right there picking up another one. It has been such a neck and neck race that this one could go to anybody. Like so many of these things, like Robert Downey Jr. is almost like 90% going to win the Best Supporting Actor. Cillian Murphy is most certainly going to win Best Leading Actor, although I do think there is an outside shot for Paul Giamatti. But we started, especially as SAG and stuff have been building up, Cillian Murphy has been building that momentum. Divine Joy Randolph for The Holdovers. 100% she's going to take it. Animated feature film. I thought it was going to be Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse after the Annies and after a lot of the other awards. I think at this point, Boy and the Heron is the front runner. And I really enjoyed. I personally, my personal take, I thought Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is better. But I think it's done. It's over. Boy and the Heron most likely takes that Oscar. I think there is still a chance, and there is still a route for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, but my betting odds are on Boy and the Heron. But yeah, like I said, all of those are there. There's so many they're locked in. We know what's going to win. Except for actress in a leading role. That is Lily Gladstone or Emma Stone. And both of those are I'm not going to fall out of my seat. There is one more, and that's just because in the past 2 weeks, I have seen a ton of people start to raise this name into the conversation. I don't think she will. I would honestly give it like a 5% chance. But I have seen a lot of people, including people on like Instagram and stuff that I know are voting Academy members. Sandra Hüller for Anatomy of a Fall. I have seen people saying that she is a wild card and be on the lookout. Again, personally, I give it like a 5% chance. But I've seen some. I'm just going through everything else. Cinematography is probably going to go to Oppenheimer. Costume design, again, the costume people, they love their, period pieces. So Oppenheimer's got that. Maybe a small chance there for Poor Things. Christopher Nolan. Again, I'm seeing some people saying there's a small chance that Yorgos takes it for Poor Things. Editing is going to go to Oppenheimer, I think. International, probably going to go to Zone of Interest, since that's also nominated for Best Picture. Makeup is going to go to Poor Things. Music, probably going to go to Oppenheimer. Original song, I do think is going to go to Barbie. I think that, but I think it's going to go to the Billie Eilish one. I don't think it's going to go to I'm Just Ken. And then of course Best Picture, I'm thinking more and more. I'm thinking it's going to be Oppenheimer. There's it's like 80%, 85% Oppenheimer, 10% Poor Things, and 5% that The Holdovers takes it. I think everything else is it's nice to be nominated. Production design is going to go to Oppenheimer. So yeah, visual effects is probably going to go to I actually think, I'm like reading the list here, I think there's a chance. In fact, you know what? I think it's going to go to Godzilla -1. I think if I was a betting man, I'd probably say it's probably going to go more to the creator, because the creator does have some incredible visual effects. But I think there's a solid chance that the Godzilla -1 crew holds it. Adapted screenplay, it's probably going to be Oppenheimer. It might be Poor Things, but an original, I do think that Holdovers is going to take original screenplay. So there's my Oscars preview. Of course, next week we will be discussing the winners, and I get to talk about how wrong I was, because this seems to happen every that I'm like, this is 100% going to win, and then it doesn't. So we'll be talking about that next weekend. All right, so moving on. Let's go ahead and talk about the gaming stuff. So there wasn't a ton of news and a lot of stuff I don't want to cover. Well, let's go ahead and talk about one thing real quick. So Warner Brothers was also at this technology thing, and they made a brief. The Warner Brothers Interactive and WB Games guy was out, and I could pull up his name, but it's like Peralt. Basically, Suicide Squad killed the Justice League. I don't like talking negative about things, but I felt like this was an important thing to talk about. Is that he basically said, hey, Suicide Squad killed the Justice League, underperformed. It didn't do very well. And so, we're going to focus more on our free-to-play and our mobile games and our live service titles. And my first thought is, and I understand live service's place. I understand why you want to do it, because you have games like Fortnite and stuff that have made a killing. But your biggest game last year was a WB Games title, Hogwarts Legacy. What else was giant last year? Baldur's Gate 3, Spider-Man 2, Final Fantasy 16, Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. What do these all have in common? They're all single-player adventure games. And I think all of them can be played offline. So I feel like it's why are we not learning the lessons from those well-performing, and I understand, and I know a lot of people, I have friends that love multiplayer and live service. And they have their place in the industry. I am not talking crap. And I understand they are incredibly hard to make, and they are incredibly hard to maintain. And I get that. But it's like, why are we not, at the very least, saying clearly, after what 2023 was, and what we've seen so far in 2024, there is a market there. There is a large, giant swath of gamers that want those offline single-player adventures and those single-player experiences. And for a company like WB, and they're not the only ones. We know other studios have done that. And I don't blame the developers. I do not blame the developers. They work incredibly hard. They really try. This is on the executives and the biggins up there, They're the ones going like, oh, we want more live service because we want that microtransaction and that battle pass revenue and all that are making those calls. And it's like, and again, I say this, and I know I'm repeating myself here. There is a place for live service. There is a place for multiplayer and under that market. But why are we not at least investing a little bit into those offline single-player games? Get another Arkham game in development, WB. People have been asking for a single-player Superman game for years. Nothing. So, this frustrates. This is what frustrates me with the executive side. And I understand they're becoming incredibly difficult to make and incredibly expensive to make. But clearly there is the market there. There's that market there. I don't want to talk about this any longer because it's irritating me. But that market is there, and I think that these high-end execs should be listening to that market. But let's talk about what I want to talk about, because I have been playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth for the past week. And here's what I can say about it. I think that this is incredible. I'm about 20... I want to say I'm either a little under or a little over 20 hours in. I'm in Chapter 4. I've completely cleared the grasslands and the Junon area. And I'm just doing the story stuff inside of I just did the parade last night. And for the most part, I absolutely love this game. Like, when this game is firing on all cylinders, I think that it is incredible. Like, there are times when I'm literally just, like, smiling because I'm like, I cannot believe we are finally getting this game. Like, this is everything I wanted. That being said, the game does stumble a few times. And we're not going to talk like, hey, it's still early. Things like, it's crashed a couple times on me. There's been a couple of weird, like, texture things that happen. But you know what? For a giant game of this size and all that, I don't hold that against the studio. I don't hold that completely against Square Enix because, hey, crap happens. If it was like, I'll give an example. One of the cutscenes I was watching, I don't know what happened to cause this, but Barrett was talking to Cloud, and you saw, like, the scruff on Barrett's neck, like a full inch off of his body. And I wish I had screenshotted that now. I wish I had screenshotted because it was just like, whoa, that's different. But I really wish that the game was not so mini-game focused, and that's kind of my one big thing that I've said. I love, like, when they were showing off at that State of Play, all the different mini-games, I was like, oh, this is gonna... But I'm honestly, like, 20 hours in, I'm kind of mini-gamed out, and I understand that most of them are optional, and even that, to that point, I've kind of been in the... You know, I might just, like, do enough to finish the side quest and then come back and get, like, the 3-star and the 100% later before I leave for the final battle. Because, yeah, even 20 hours in, because it's, like, literally every time I turn a corner, they're like, oh, you need to go talk to so-and-so and help them with this problem. And it's like, okay. So I run and talk to so-and-so, and they're like, oh, by the way, play this game with me. And if they're not saying, hey, play this new mini-game that I just invented... It's, hey, play Queen's Blood with me. Which, Queen's Blood in its own is its own hassle. I am not a big TCG guy. So, I put that in my own little box. I understand that there are people that do, and there are people that love it. Like, I have a bunch of Disney Lorcana cards. I never play with them. I literally just put them in my binder and look at them, because I'm like, the pictures are cool. That being said, so that's what... And honestly, with Queen's Blood, I just, like, I understand the idea of the strategy behind it, and I've looked up a couple guides, but honestly, I just keep pushing through until I get lucky enough to win. That's how I've been getting through it. But yeah, so many mini-games. Like, this game overwhelms you with mini-games. I also did not think, and this is where I know some of y'all are going to make fun of me for this, and I understand why you would. I do. This game throws, like, every mechanic and everything about its combat system, which is incredibly complex and incredibly detailed. And yes, you don't need all of that in the opening parts of the game. But it introduces a lot, and it throws a lot at you to the point where I'm still figuring things out with the battle system. And that kind of overwhelmed me for a bit in my sub-average intelligent mind. But, you know, as with any great game, you know, I did this with Dark Souls and stuff. I figured out the mechanics as I went along, and that's kind of what I've been doing. I've been, you know, doing, oh, this is how you do such and such, and you know, sometimes looking the tutorials back up to figure it out. But, you know, other than those two little hiccups, like, I think probably some of the best voice acting I've ever seen in a game. I think the story has been incredibly... Outside of that really weird opening, and if you played the game, you know what I'm talking about. And I'm sure that gets explained later. But the way that they chose to open this game made me go, huh? Huh? Like, it's so weird. And the fact that it doesn't tell you anything about it. And, you know, if you've played it, you know. If not, I'm not going to spoil it for you, because you will be confused in the first 2 minutes as well. But the story has been really interesting. I've loved the way that they've reimagined the two areas I've been in. You know, the way that the vintage music and the 97 stuff mixes in with the modern. It's wonderful. When I am 100% enjoying it, I am loving it. You know, outside of those couple hiccups, like I said, I'm kind of mini-gamed out. And maybe, I'm going to get on it after I get off the podcast. So maybe by the time we reach tomorrow, that will be resolved. But, and I might be over it in a couple days. I don't know. But other than those mini games, and a couple things where I was just overwhelmed. But that's becoming less of an issue as I've gotten farther into the game. So, with that said, what am I up to? Obviously, we've been talking about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. That's probably been the biggest thing I've been doing all week. I saw Dune. And my full review is up on Everythingentertainment.network. And I will tell you that now, it's weird how I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. We'll just throw that right out there. Because while I loved it, and I personally enjoyed every second of this movie and everything I saw on the screen, the visuals, the acting, Denis Villeneuve is just one of the most visionary and creative directors working today. He really is. And the way that he does this world and just completely owns everything on the screen. On top of that, with like the best way I know how to say it without spoiling it is that this is a movie that is filled with cautionary tales. And the way that the narrative goes, that's why I said earlier at the top, I get the feeling you're going to see especially a lot of like casual moviegoers and stuff going, oh, this movie didn't work for me. Because, it is not the happy ending that a lot of movies are. And I don't think it's the ending that a lot of people expected. So that being said, I think that, and the visual effects, like for me, my big thing when I watch movies lately has been practical sets. And like the way that you can tell in this movie that they were actually out filming in the desert. And then of course they had to like CGI the sandworms and stuff. I'm not stupid. I wasn't expecting them to actually build giant sandworm puppets. But the way that you could tell that they were actually there in the desert filming this thing with some added CGI, nothing has driven me crazier in movies the past few years than when you could tell it's like one or two actors just running around a green room. Nothing is driving me crazier than that. And so when I saw Dune, and the way that everything about it is just wonderful. It is a near perfect film. If this thing wasn't so dang slow. This movie, I know, and I'm sure there's going to be a ton of people that disagree with me on this. But this is like 2 hours and 46 minutes. It absolutely feels like it's 2 hours and 46 minutes. Like, everyone drags their feet, in some cases, literally, through this film. Like, and as much as I loved it, even I'm sitting there like, can we go? Can we pick up the pace? Some of us have things to do. We have places to be. I came to see this before I went into work tonight. So it is. It's just so slow moving. And it's so hard to say that when I loved everything that was on the screen. I was just like, it's moving at such a turtle speed that it's dragging me down. So, and that's just my opinion. I know a lot of people aren't going to agree with that, but that was just the way that I saw it. Again, I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. If you want to read the full review, go ahead and go to Everythingentertainment.network. It's still one of the top stories out there. So, I also did make some progress on Persona. I am about 30 hours in now on that one, and I think I'm around a third, maybe halfway point of the game. I haven't looked up a walkthrough or anything, so I can't tell you anything about how close or far away from the end I am. But I think I'm definitely well into it now. But it's such an incredible game. Like I'm the more I play it, the more I'm like, why did I not pick up on this franchise before? Like, why when I tried Persona 4 Golden back on the Vita, why did this game turn me off? Was I just in a bad mood? Now granted, and it's funny because I was talking to somebody a couple days ago who said oh yeah, all of these games are wildly different as far as themes and characters and stuff goes. So there's still a chance you're going to go back to Persona 4 and still go, oh yeah, this doesn't work for me. And so I actually downloaded both Persona 4 Golden and Persona 5 Royal. So once I'm finishing with those, I'm like, oh my gosh, I just went full fanboy on this franchise. And we'll see. We'll see. But I don't get a lot of time. Like, I'm only going to get about 2 hours in today. So, but yeah, Persona's just, it's Persona 3 Reload, and I should have qualified that earlier. It's so incredible. Like, I've so attached to all these characters that I love it so much, guys. I have. So, and there's that. So, we did all that. Now, my take for the week is that I wanted to talk about, so this year, especially in games, and kind of in movies, because we got Dune, which is going to be, I tell you what, it's going to be hard to find a movie better than Dune this year. I think it's going to be very hard. Like, if Deadpool and Wolverine are great, and I'm sure it will be, I don't see it being as good as Dune. I don't see Wicked being as good as Dune. I don't see Planet of the Apes being as good as Dune. I'm trying to think of what else I'm really, because there's no like Avatar or anything like that I think, nothing I really see has a chance. Now, again, we have to wait until they come out. So, that being said, Dune came out, and there's several others, but especially look at what's come out for games this year. We've had Persona 3 Royal, we've had Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth, Persona 3 Reload, Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth. I have not played it yet. I probably will eventually, but not for a while. In Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. If you've been a JRPG fan, you've been set. Helldivers is another one that I probably will not play until I can get it for like $10, and then maybe I'll give it a chance. Again, I'm not a multiplayer guy, so. And then you had several others, and so yeah, this has been a huge year already, and we're just starting the third month of it. But here's the thing. Look at what's coming out later. Crickets. We've got Dragon's Dogma in a couple weeks, Rise of the Ronin, but really, like, once you get into the summer and like, Legends of Mana, it's crickets. It's nothing. Like, the whole, which makes me go like, did they just, are we too front loaded? Now. I understand. Because this is my thought too. Usually during the summer, they start dropping a bunch of game announcements and stuff but usually by then, we at least have like a PlayStation game or a Nintendo game that we know is coming in the fall. And Sony has already said they don't have any plans for any major first-party AAA games before next March. So we still got a full year to go for the next big Sony first-party one. Nintendo, I think because of the stuff that's going on with the Switch 2, I think that's probably why we're going to see something from Nintendo this holiday season. Probably something for the Switch. Because, since Switch 2 is probably not coming until next spring now, that's going to be a good question about, does Nintendo have a game ready to go? Is it maybe one of their games that's going to be multi-platform, and they're just going to drop the Switch version, and then the Switch 2 version will launch with the console. Something like that. Nintendo will have something. Microsoft will probably have something, but again, we don't really know a ton of Microsoft's schedule either. I mean, are they trying to get Avowed out this year? Because that might be their big fall title. Yeah, so that's kind of my take, is that it's really weird how we've been just like treated to this embarrassment of riches. And even I've called it, I kind of called 2024 my backlog year because I'm trying not to spend as much money on games. I'm trying to do this thing where I like add a bunch of stuff to my wish list and then buy it when it goes on sale. We'll see how that works, because I'm trying to be more frugal. And maybe that's a section for the thing of, how can you still be frugal and how can you save money as a gamer? Maybe that is something to look into. Well, I'm spitballing here. My brain's almost fried, so we're almost done. We're almost done, guys. But yeah, front half has been incredibly loaded. We do not know, and I'm guessing probably we won't know until Summer Games Fest at a minimum. So we've still got a few months of like, we just got all these games and nothing. And now it's not. So, hey, at the rate I'm going, I might still be playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth in November. So that doesn't bother me a ton. But there we go. And, of course, the big thing this weekend and the rest of this week is Oscars time. For me, the Oscars are my favorite event of the year. I absolutely love the Oscars. And I know what a lot of y'all say. I know. I see it all the time in comment sections. The Oscars are just a bunch of rich people, overindulging and patting themselves on the back and saying that they did such a good job. And you're not wrong. You're not wrong. But for me, when I watch the Oscars are the celebration of the year that was in film. And trust me, when they get up there and they get on their little soapbox and they start spouting all this political stuff, and you could guarantee with everything going on in the world, that is going to happen on Sunday. I agree with some, I disagree with others. But for me, that's their platform. If that's how they want to spend their 2 minutes or whatever long they get with their accepted speeches, that's what they spend it on, whether I agree with it or not, because that's what the First Amendment is. So they're going to do that. But for me, it's all about celebrating. And we had a great year last year. We did not one of the all-time greats, because I think for as much great as we got, we also had a lot of kind of movies as well. So overall, Oscars or Sunday, that's probably going to be our big topic next week. And that does do it here. Thank you all so much for listening. This has been a scattershot type of show, but thank you all so much, and I will see you next week for the Everything Entertainment podcast. If you want to follow more, I publish articles Monday through Friday as much as I can every day on Everythingentertainment.network. You can follow me on Twitter at Chad_Shreves. You can follow me on Instagram at Everythingentertainment.network. And you can follow the Everything Entertainment Network on YouTube. The podcasts are going to be there, and I'm going to, hopefully within the next week or so, get on a more consistent publishing videos schedule. So again, thank you all so much, and I will have a great rest of your week, and I will see you next week.